Me, 30 female, with my boyfriend, 32 male, of 3.5 years. I broke down and made a pro/con list and am embarrassed by the cons and concerned. I've posted here before, but essentially I have been struggling for months with when to make the decision to end things. I know it sounds stupid, but I finally broke down and made a list. The problem is that the day-to-day is fine. We joke, we laugh, we have deep conversations, we make dinner for each other, we say nice things, but I've had this serious anxiety about the future, and I think I've nailed down why. Pros: similar senses of humor, similar music, TV, and movie tastes. We can be goofy together. We take turns cooking for each other and cleaning the kitchen nightly. We travel well together. Once we get to the destination or on a plane, we are both similarly active, similarly financially responsible. He always sticks up for someone if they are ever bullied, even at work, in the adult sense of the word. Same political views and interest in politics, similar preference in activities. X, camping, concerts, hiking, breweries. He loves my family and they love him. Gets along with my friends. Good chemistry. We've developed our own cute little songs and nicknames and sayings. But the cons, oh boy. If I suggest an activity that isn't one of his most favorite things, for example if I suggest a date night, to do a craft or board game or DIY project, or a walk, he will say no. He says yes, but doesn't mean it. So I will say want to go on a big trip, pre-COVID, and he will say yes, but months later I find out he means no. He's flipped-flopped on kids, which I know is a deal breaker by itself. He moved from maybe no to probably yes, which concerns me. Just tell me if you don't think so. I'm 30 and deserve to know. He's not comfortable being totally naked. C, never nude from Arrested Development. He doesn't do much foreplay, like more than 15 to 30 seconds, unless it's like an anniversary or day. Yes, we've talked about this several times and he doesn't like foreplay, so it doesn't occur to him, and says I should ask every time. I said just assume I want it. He shuts down during hard converse. Well, he used to. He would get mad and stomp off and refuse to have a calm rational discussion, even if we both cooled down. Now he placates me by saying I hear you and agree and refuses to discuss further. This one is the worst one. I'm starting to think he is selfish. How do you come back from that? I feel like he's staring at his phone a lot and he can't focus on me and the phone, so I usually lose out. His mom is incredibly difficult, as in all of his siblings set hard boundaries and their so's see it, and he legitimately doesn't often see it, which could lead to major issues down the line. He lets his mom manipulate his siblings against each other and falls for it every time. If he's stressed about work he's totally quiet and cold, and it ruins the evening, no warning. We've talked about it several tunes, and it's sort of better. He mostly vents now. He isn't very supportive of my creative side business. He says he will do therapy, but then makes every excuse not to, and was raised by a therapist he respects. I like a short shoulder rub and I ask maybe twice a month, and it's been probably 10 months since he gave me one. I just pay someone now. The issue is he will say I'm going to give you a massage, and it's meaningless. He doesn't do it. He has to pick what we eat and watch. I didn't notice at first because I'm pretty laid back and will watch or eat most anything, but after 2 years of living together I'm exhausted. I've mentioned this several times and he will be open for a few days then nothing. Not that we are in a position to think about the future, but he's certainly never mentioned it. I once asked if he ever thinks about the future and he said no, but I would be happy to start. He won't initiate saying I love you, no matter how many times I've asked for it or asked to understand why he can't. He says it back, just won't initiate, and verbal is my love language. He doesn't really do romantic gestures. I often will pick up items I think he might like, and he doesn't do this. I asked for random flowers, but I do get them on V-Day. He allows self-esteem issues to get in the way. He's the most handsome person I've ever dated by like a million, but I know that doesn't mean he doesn't have a struggle. But he will think these wild ideas that have no truth. Like I did our Christmas card on a tripod shoot and I positioned us to get a cool composition and he decided I was trying to keep the camera far away from him because I was ashamed of him. Bizarre. After this convo I was like, we need therapy. I get anxiety before we have a weekend trip because he always forces it to be hours late. He won't have started laundry or he will have lied about taking a half day. Something. He's not respectful of my time commitments, so if I say I'm going to be somewhere he doesn't care. His family plans Christmas like the day before and mine does far out, and I know my family is extreme, but I want to give them an idea of when we will show up. I'm mentally exhausted by this internal struggle of weighing all of the above. He doesn't take care of me. When I'm sick he's just like, oh I'm sorry. I don't mean wait on me hand and foot at all, but like I grab him Gatorade and meds, and he doesn't do that unless I'm really sick and ask. When we hike he goes so fast I can't keep up, and once I fell and I was crying and he had no clue because he just totally leaves me behind, and I'm an experienced, fast hiker compared to your average person. My family and friends, we look out for each other when we hike. Obviously some weighty cons there. I recognize that some are deal breakers and some wouldn't matter if I was overall happy. I know that I can just leave any time, but my question is, am I being unfair/unkind in my judgments and only focusing on the negative? I've never lived with a partner before, but had great roommate situations, and I worry I'm throwing away the good based on focusing on the negative. Too long didn't read. I finally sat down and did pros and cons, and had twice as many cons in my relationship. I've been going crazy trying to decide what the heck to do. Now let's read some comments. Are you sure that your boyfriend actually enjoys being with you? I'm not being sassy by asking that. I'm being serious. He doesn't want to engage in your hobbies and interests, only wants you to share his own. He is actively against making you happy in bed. He won't do the things you've told him make you loved. He pays attention to his phone over you, pays so little attention to you that he once abandoned you crying and injured by the trail on a hike. It sounds like you two have some things in common, and it's made him go, oh good enough, but he isn't really excited to be with you or to engage with you. He's just kinda drifting along because things are easy and he isn't motivated to actually try to have something he wants. Yeah, I don't think that this guy's dangerous or an abuser like we see all the damn time here, but he's just along for the ride. It doesn't seem like he wants a partnership. He wants to live his life how he wants to, and you're welcome to join, but don't bother trying to change him. And by change, I mean make any type of request. Expect him to undergo any growth or be more considerate of your needs. This guy sounds like an alright acquaintance to have in a friend group, but not someone to rely on or build a life with. I was thinking the same thing. And not to sound like an os, but it sounds like he's come to the mental conclusion that you annoy him. You may want to look at things in that perspective, and if you agree then it's better to rethink the relationship, as you will have likely have checked out. Right? It's almost as if he's just tolerating her and doesn't really like her. Sounds like you'll never be a priority. Do you think you'd be happier with someone who will at least pretend to be interested in meeting your needs? He's made it clear he isn't interested in doing anything for you. Giving up having kids for a lifetime of crap. He's with someone who lies to you constantly and won't even bring you Gatorade when you're sick unless you beg. Sounds like a really crappy deal. Like the cons were all bad, but for some reason, when I got to the Gatorade one it really pissed me off. That's such a basic, easy thing you'd do for someone, especially when you live with them. What an ass. Sounds like bottom of the barrel. There is much better people who will go beyond expectations. No need to scrape the gum off the road. And even the sex. I know it doesn't always seem like a big deal, but it's such a great way to bond with the person you love, and even if it's not something that would normally be a deal breaker, knowing that the person you're with doesn't care about your needs sexually is frustrating and honestly makes you feel unloved. Sit him down. Let him know that this time, the talk is serious. And well, if he responds like how he normally does, then maybe it's time to move on. You deserve to be happy together. The sheer difference in length between pros and cons says a lot, but also the quality of the pros vs cons. Those are pros you can find in a lot of people. It doesn't sound like he is trying to do any better for you, and that's the biggest red flag. Yeah, those are the pros of a friend/concert buddy. Those are pros you can find in a lot of people. Yup, op should be able to find someone with all those pros and fewer and less serious cons. When you put it like that, it really speaks volumes. I had never thought of it like that. The sheer difference in length between pros and cons says a lot, To be fair, this may reflect more on what the op hopes to accomplish, which I support her in. If you end it, I think end it completely. My worst experiences are when I let things linger, especially if I enter into a new relationship. Just finish it. It's done. Only evaluate for your own enrichment, not to look back at your decision. Not saying that's what you meant at all. Plus just the oh boy before starting the cons just conveys a lot of pent up emotions for me. Yes, I can't nothing. Those pros are okay pros, but the cons are all red flags. You don't sound happy, and that's all that matters. You don't need a grand reason written in calligraphy on parchment to break up. I personally would be much happier on my own, and doing a lot of those things with friends who actually like me, and if I find a guy who's willing to put in the work, that would be a bonus. If this is something that's been on your mind for months and doesn't seem to be getting better despite the multiple conversations you are having to try and resolve issues, just call it. You have already demonstrated that pouring more energy into this relationship will not make it better, a classic sunk cost fallacy. My concern is, really seems he's not trying to improve, in which case, the negatives are only going to increase. The food thing alone, not allowing you to choose to eat something different from what he chose, that one alone would drive me batty, and I, personally, wouldn't be able to tolerate just that one thing with a partner. Yeah, it will get a tiny bit better, one step forward, which worked for a little while, but it doesn't cut it anymore, especially when it doesn't last. Yeah, anytime there is controlling behavior about food or anything else is the biggest fattest red flag, and I don't want any of that in my relationships. You try and you can get out of my life. I dunno, leaving her behind in a forest during a hike *WITH an injury isn't just huge red flag, but really is a deal breaker. That's the kind of shit that, if he's not begging and pleading for forgiveness and promising to never exhibit behavior like that again, then I'm so out instantly. We both need to agree we look out for each other. Otherwise, seriously, WTF is the point? I'm not going to be with a person who has so little interest in my well-being that they'd be perfectly content to wander off without me while injured. On a fundamental level, this just makes my jaw hit the floor. This one thing here betrays the ultimate point of partnership at its most primal level. That isn't how you treat your other half, your partner. Damn the rest of the red flags, many of which even have arguable situational resolutions, although I still doubt it seeing as how only communication can fix these problems, and it sounds like op has been thoroughly communicative and simply has an unresponsive partner. Pros and cons aside, you're not living the life you want to live, and you're not getting what you want out of the relationship. Even if you're okay with it most of the time, you know there's something off. It's not working for me is enough reason to leave. The guy himself sounds spoiled, selfish, and self-absorbed. He barely attempts to please you in any way. Doesn't enjoy foreplay, forgive me, makes it sound like he's using you. He's trying, or pretending to, just enough to get you to not leave. I admit, I didn't even finish reading the con list, it's so long. The pro list. That's what you can find in any decent friendship. It does not sound like a relationship to me. He is seemingly getting more out of it than you, and what you get out of it is fun light conversation, a trip buddy, and a ton of stress. I don't intend to be rude or offensive. Please tell me if I did offend you. I believe you deserve more than what you're currently getting, and he will not change. He is the way he is, which in itself is fine, but if it's not for you, and quite obviously it isn't, then he is not meant to be. He sounds like an okay friend, but not a life partner. Communication is very important, and from what I read in the list, he refuses to do so, which will make you more miserable the longer it goes on. I wish you the best of luck and hope you'll find a solution that works for you and makes you happy. That's totally fair. I sat on a park bench and started writing on paper and went a little nuts with the verbiage, and before I knew it, I was transcribing quite a long list. Thank you for your response. So many more cons. That seems very telling. My biggest concern is that he doesn't seem to value your feelings or try to improve. A few of these things, like wanting my partner to be caregiver when I'm sick, are things that I have talked to my boyfriend about because he wasn't always great about it. The difference is now he shows up with hot tea, meds, and an ice pack, or whatever. You deserve someone who makes the effort to meet you halfway, and it sounds like he isn't even listening when you tell him what you need. Are you dating my ex? I hope so, because I would hate to believe that there are more than a few guys like this. Especially the hiking thing. I think it's a perfect little model of your relationship. It was mine, even up to the falling and him not knowing thing. As you've described it, you do something that you both enjoy together, but he does it in such a way that you might as well not even be there, and also you could have negative consequences that he won't help you with. I think you have your answer, though. I think you had it before you made your list. I think you should give yourself the gift of making him your ex as well. I was happier alone than I was with the guy who treated me like this. And I'm happier now with someone who has all of the same pros and many more with none of the cons. You deserve better than this, and you can have better than this. I would like to suggest therapy, though. I didn't go right after, and I thought I was okay, but really I had been taking self-esteem damage throughout the relationship, and I needed help rebuilding it. Learn from my mistake, please. It was harder for me than it had to be to start to love myself again. I thought I did love myself. I didn't realize how much of my self-worth had been dismantled, and how badly. You've probably taken more damage than you realize too. You really don't need any reason to walk away from a relationship you are this unhappy and unfulfilled in. You're not married, haven't even discussed the future, and don't have children or giant financial commitments together. Now is the time to walk away and find out whether you have a pattern of looking for negatives in all relationships or this guy really is not a good partner. I'm leaning towards the latter. A lot of this is a matter of asking, but if someone refuses to actually meet you halfway, there's not much point in staying. I can imagine that breaking up, especially if you live together during a global pandemic, can be a very emotional process. However, you have given this person 3.5 years of your life. It's time for you to move on to new things that will actually benefit you. You've said it yourself that the cons are outweighing the pros. I know that I can just leave any time, but my question is, am I being unfair/unkind in my judgments and only focusing on the negative? I've never lived with a partner before, but had great roommate situations. You are not being unfair, nor are you unkind. You're a human being who has outgrown a relationship and you're taking a logical approach to understand if it's worth it. Everyone has their reasons for wanting out at some point and you don't need to justify them to anyone if your heart isn't feeling it. I think you know that you're done. If you'd like a stranger on the internet to tell you that you're not a bad person for being done, then here it is. I can't decide for you, but for me these are the 4 individual deal breakers. Selfish in bed. Almost all women require foreplay to be aroused. He doesn't care if you enjoy sex, never thinking about the future. How is this even possible? Don't get your hopes up. This man would have a proposal, help with wedding planning or retirement planning, etc. Leaving you behind while hiking, WTF, and not being decided about kids. I think after 3.5 years together in your 30s, this is something he would need to decide for me to stay with him. My fiance and I had this talk a few months into our relationship in our mid to late 20s, because I was 100% sure I didn't want kids, and didn't want to waste either of our time. If you know for sure you do, or don't want kids, he's wasting both your time. If he's still waffling, 32 is old enough that a decision should be made soon. I believe there is someone out there better for you than this man. If it were me, I couldn't stay. But I know how hard it is when you've been with someone a long time and you love them. Hi there. So I have been in a similar situation. Lived together with my ex-partner for almost 4 years. Day to day was good, and to any outsider, we were perfect for each other. However, the internal struggle you mentioned was present. I, however, let my gut feeling not take over the love I had. We had a lovely home and a good setup. I'm a very anxious person who wasn't in therapy back then. So it was genuinely difficult to separate my anxiety from some very real fears. And I stuck with him through everything. He too would just shut down when it came to emotional and intense discussions. I died a little every time. Still, I stuck around. Foolish of me. He too promised that he'd go to therapy, but never did. And then 5 months before we were supposed to get married, he broke up with me. What my gut was telling me was true. I should have left a long time ago. He told me that he never really wanted to get married and went along with the idea because he didn't want to have a confrontation. Wow. And on the next day, I got to know that he was also cheating on me. If you are an anxious person, this decision may be very difficult. Therapy can help. I'm in my early 30s and single, but with a much better mental health. I'm writing this here so you know that these things happen with other people too. I wish I had made a pros and cons list, but I was too chicken for it. You are a very brave person and appear to be sorted in life. You know what you want. You will make the best decision when you listen to yourself. I wish you all the luck through this process. Whichever option you take up, you will marvel at the strength you have. The courage comes out of nowhere. I'm not in the camp that says OMG girl dump him, because obviously you love him. So you need to separate your list into serious deal breakers and things you'd like to see him change. Then you have to communicate that deal breaker list in an urgent way he understands and comprehends, so he can appreciate the gravity of those things. BF, we have been together almost 4 years, and I see a future together, but X, Y, and Z are serious issues for me. I'd really like to feel you take these things as seriously as I do, or it means we won't be able to continue our relationship. Even spell out exactly what things you'd like to see him do differently. And I mean it. Put it in a way that is actionable and not vague. In your hiking example, it can be, I enjoy hiking and seeing the scenery and appreciating nature, but I want to do it with you. I feel like you leave me behind too much, and I'm glad you can be quick, but I want to hike together. If you don't see changes in 6 months, then you know this is how it is. You either accept that is the man you're with or you leave. My advice is to literally keep a record of it. Conversations, improvements, or lack thereof in a spreadsheet or something, just so that over the next few months, you can keep track of it. Ultimately, it depends entirely on if you are happy in this relationship or not. You can't make anyone love you the way you want to feel loved, and if he cares about you, he will try to understand your concerns. The family thing is sticky because he didn't choose his family, but he does have to be man enough to deal with it appropriately. Thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell for more videos. Also like the video if you enjoy it.